I have focused on the issue of the coup of a duly elected president of the United States, Donald Trump, for the past 2 years at least, 2.5 years. And the key component to the coup actually focuses on an issue that we have been trying to educate and empower people with the information since March 19th of 2017 when it comes to the issue of illegal surveillance. You see, folks, illegal surveillance is the key, what drove the coup attempt of President Trump. In addition, a tremendous amount of misinformation was given to the public by the deep state to try to frame President Trump. And at the crux of that was that the DNC servers were hacked by the Russians. My two next guests and their team did the hard work and actually the investigation and developed data, not conjecture, not propaganda, but data that showed that, in fact, those DNC servers were not hacked, that it was an internal download event, and then that information was transferred to an item such as a thumb drive or thumb drives, and then got delivered to Julian Assange and then published over WikiLeaks. So the fact that people were saying that President Trump was involved in a Russian collusion, no, folks, there was no there. He's innocent, as was his team, and it was proven with data and facts. But there's been a disagreement that's developed that we've spoken about because we have spoken about the fact that the NSA system has been violated for decades. And my next two guests brought that forward and became whistleblowers in 2001 and were targeted by Robert Mueller, who was then the director of the FBI, who we spoke about earlier several times today. They were targeted because of them becoming whistleblowers and coming forward and saying, listen, the NSA platform is being criminally abused and folks are being illegally surveilled. But they've also come forward, as has another individual. All three now have gotten tremendous grief, and they've said, listen, in addition to the NSA platform, there were agencies such as the CIA that had developed a parallel platform of surveillance where there was no reporting system, and which was actually darker and more evil. And you had individuals that were monitoring phone calls, emails, internet activities, text, financial transactions, and they were doing so without a reporting system. And you see, folks, that was the key to the coup, the illegal surveillance system. And my next two guests are two of the individuals who have come out and said, look, we actually have been involved in parallel platforms. They do exist because there is a contingent of individuals, in particular on another platform and another individual, that have said parallel platforms don't exist, that it's all on the NSA platform. It's all abuse of 702s. 702s were abused. All of us agree with that. Where we disagree is the fact that we are saying that the illegality also occurred on these parallel platforms through the CIA, through the Department of Defense, through the FBI. My two guests, they're not only friends, but they're regular guests. And they're the two biggest, now underline this word, experts in the world. It's not just they have a little dabbling in it for the past couple months. They are experts and have been for decades in surveillance platforms. Bill Binney and Kirk Wiebe. Brief introduction. Bill is a former highly placed intelligence official with the United States National Security Agency who turned whistleblower and resigned on October 31st, 2001 after more than 30 years with the agency. He was a high-profile critic of his former employers during the George W. Bush administration. Bill was a Russian specialist and worked in the operations side of intelligence, starting as an analyst, ending as technical director prior to becoming a geopolitical world technical director. In the 1990s, he co-founded a unit of automating signals intelligence with NSA research chief John Taggart. Bill's NSA career culminated as the technical leader for intelligence in 2001. Kirk Wiebe is a retired National Security Agency whistleblower who worked at the agency for over 32 years. Kirk, together with colleagues Bill Binney, Diane Rourke, and Ed Loomis, blew the whistle on NSA mismanagement and waste of billions of dollars in a complaint to the Department of Defense Inspector General. Since retiring, Kirk has made several key public disclosures regarding NSA's massive surveillance program subverting the U.S. Constitution. I would like to welcome back Bill Binney and Kirk Wiebe, the Joe DiMaggio, Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth of surveillance platforms. Bill and Kirk, welcome.
Hi, Dave.
Now, Bill and Kirk, this disagreement about illegal surveillance started on May 29th, and it's occurred on another platform. And on that platform, the host and another guest stated that all the illegal surveillance has occurred on the NSA platform and involved this 702 abuse. Bill and Kirk, is that accurate, or is there something else? Was there something else going on illegally with parallel platforms, and one that was described as the hammer? Bill, your take.
Yeah, that's basically the whole point here is that these parallel programs doing SIGINT type data was done in CIA all along. And
the CIA is not supposed to be involved in domestic activities, correct?
They're not supposed to, but that's never been the case. So.
Kirk, do I have this disagreement wrong, or am I correct?
No, you're absolutely right, Dave. There are certain incontrovertible facts that we can prove, and the U.S. budget, intelligence community budget, can testify to how money's divvied up, and it covers programs by the U.S. military. They have surveillance capabilities. It covers programs covered by the NSA. They have surveillance capabilities. And it covers the CIA. They have surveillance. And even the FBI has it.
So, parallel platforms exist, Bill and Kirk, correct?
Yep, that's
Absolutely.
right.
And one of those parallel
participated in some. So,
one more time, Bill.
We left NSA after that. We participated in some.
So you and Kirk participated in parallel platforms.
Yep.
And one of these parallel platforms that has been described is one that was developed by, or co-developed, involved an individual by the name of Dennis Montgomery, correct?
We weren't involved in that one, no, but we were involved in one that formed the basis of what he was talking about, yeah.
Okay, but there has one been described called the Hammer that Dennis Montgomery was involved with. I'm not saying you were involved in that. Correct?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what came out in Vault 7 and various other, even Mike Zulu, who was on the show earlier, on another earlier day, talked about that program. And he said basically, it was a program where there's some very suspicious stuff was going on and needed to be investigated. That's exactly what we've been saying all along.
So you bring up this fellow, Mike Zullo. You guys had some interactions with him. He's an investigator.
Yep.
The individual who has claimed that the Hammer, that parallel platform, initially this individual said that parallel platforms did not exist on that May 29th interview on another platform. It was all NSA. It was all 702 abuse. This individual then said, well, he had a source. And he gave an interview last week on that other platform and said his source was Mike Zullo, this investigator who confirmed the fact that parallel platform, this Hammer system did not exist, and that it was all a hoax and a fraud. That's what was said last week. And in fact, he went on to say individuals that have claimed that the Hammer exists, such as General McInerney, Admiral Lyons, who's an individual who stepped up as well, Bill Binney, Kirk Wiebe, Dave Janda, Mary Fanning, and Alan Jones, who are investigative journalists who have done 7 or 8 articles on this. Well, they're involved in this, and gave some indication that they thought that we were being controlled by some other source or something. I found it interesting that he said that his source was Mike Zullo on this, because I quote Mike Zullo from a June 28th, 2019 article written on something called The Post and Email. And here is what he said. Zullo, direct quote, "The bottom line to all of this, I fully believe Dennis Montgomery worked for the three-letter agencies. I fully believe he developed some portion of the hammer. I saw the patent for Medusa, the program he wrote that does the illegal hacking. I believe he was part of two corporations. I believe he was doing hacking for the government, and I believe he is in possession of some information, end quote. Now, does that quote jive with the fact of what was being said that he said? Kirk?
No, I mean, Zullo is stating that the hammer existed.
And he did in that interview this past week on another platform, correct?
He did. On that other platform, he participated in a roundtable in which he again stated the hammer existed. Dennis developed it or some part of it. And Dennis has information that should be investigated.
And isn't that what, Bill, you've said, and Kirk, you've said, and I've said, and Mary Fanning and Alan Jones and General Mackey, that this cannot lay under a rug any longer? The light of truth needs to be shed on it because the ramifications of this are so huge. In particular, it could well be the crux of this whole illegal surveillance activity that was attempted to be used to bring down a president of the United States who was innocent.
If you don't cover all the possible sources of surveillance, Dave, you can't do a credible job of investigation.
Now, in this interview on the other platform the other day, there was something that was left out that I believe is a critical component. And that is, it was not brought up about something called the state secrets privilege that was invoked on Dennis Montgomery. Now, Kirk and Bill, am I wrong by saying that's important, and educate the listeners on the potential significance of that point?
Well, it's critical, Dave, because there's been so much garbage put forth about how Dennis Montgomery, when he gave tapes to the FBI didn't sign for them. Or when Dennis Montgomery got debriefed, there was no signature, and blah, blah, blah. This is all paperwork. Signatures can come later. You know, a photograph at any instant in time is not definitive evidence of absence or presence of signature. So that evidence is somewhat debatable and flimsy. And so it's important to know that if a person such as Negroponte, the first director of national intelligence, goes to court, thinks Dennis is so important that he needs to go to court and to get him not to reveal what he worked on, to keep it secret, and mandate that in a court of law under penalty. And the penalty for violation is sizable. Mm-hmm. All right.
Right.
And for that to have happened tells you that Dennis, in fact, worked for the government, worked in a capacity that was under classification controls. It doesn't state exactly what the capacity was. I don't care. We're relying on Dennis saying he was part of a surveillance effort that captured the information of the Trump family, judges, and a slew of other entities, maybe even globally involved. I don't know the extent of it. But the point of it is that on its face is enough evidence to pursue an investigation to see if that source played any role whatsoever in this attempted coup of a sitting president.
So when people say, well, Dennis Montgomery won't talk to the press about it, Dennis Montgomery won't talk to the public about it, Dennis Montgomery, tell me if I'm wrong, cannot, because a state secrets privilege is a high-end gag order that if he violates, he's going to do prison time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that, Bill?
Yep. That's pretty clear to me too.
So when I had you, Kirk, and you, Bill, review his security clearance information,
Yeah,
state secrets
yeah.
privilege. You reviewed it, and Kirk, you sent me a statement, and I want to know if you stand by it. You sent me this statement on May 30th. Quote, Dave, all the documents you sent testify to the effect that Dennis Montgomery was involved in developing surveillance methods for the United States government that the latter entity, United States government, believed would pose grave danger to the national security if divulged. In reviewing them, I did not see anything questionable or that would indict what Dennis has said, end quote. Best, Kirk. Kirk, live radio. Do you still stand by that statement?
Without reservation.
And then, Bill, your response was, after you reviewed what Kirk had said, Dave, I agree with Kirk. Bill?
Yep.
Okay.
That's right.
So let me get this straight. The foremost experts in the world, Bill Binney and Kirk Wiebe, believe this needs to be further investigated, that parallel platforms exist, and the statement that I just read about Montgomery and about the hammer. Okay. And the individual who has said this is a fraud, it's a hoax, it doesn't exist, it's non-existent. His source that he claims is his expert, who even Zullo, I don't think, to be fair to Zullo, he's never claimed to be an expert in IT. In fact, in that interview we did on another platform the other night, he even said he wasn't an expert in IT. But that was this other individual source. The direct quote from the post and email, quote, the bottom line to all of this, I fully believe Dennis Montgomery worked for the three-letter agencies. I fully believe he developed some portion of the hammer. I saw the patent for Medusa, the program he wrote that does the illegal hacking. I believe he was part of two corporations. I believe he was doing hacking for the government, and I believe he is in possession of some information. And Bill and Kirk, when Zullo talked about this on this other platform the other night, what he said confirmed what was written in this article in the post and email, correct?
Yes, and what we had discussed in the earlier episodes that we've been talking about. So, I mean, it's something we've been saying all along. Right. But the people involved in this on the other argument are, in many cases, are manufacturing things about you and me and Kirk and everybody else without any substance behind it. And, it's just... in my mind, that's delusional thinking, or they're just creating smoke screens to keep away from the basic central issue, which is this needs to be investigated.
Right,
period.
And my concern is if we discount parallel platforms and the hammer and what was occurring there, if we discount it and say it's all on the NSA, it's all 702s, and please tell me if I'm wrong on this. My concern is that deep state criminal players that are involved in our government, that were involved in parallel platforms, if we ignore that, they're going to get away scot-free.
Exactly.
Yep.
So, Bill,
I mean, it's a diversion. That's all. It's a diversion away from CIA, where all this stuff was going on.
So, Bill, you took the very courageous step of taking this information on parallel platforms and bringing it to the Department of Justice, correct?
Yes, I passed that in through my sources or means.
Okay. Now, Bill, you cannot talk about what's happened, I understand, since you did that. But...
Well, because, I could potentially be called as a witness and,
right.
That would be tainting the case, I guess.
Can I ask this, Bill, and you can tell me if this question's off bounds. After you turned over information about parallel platforms and their existence and this stuff about Montgomery and stuff, did anybody from the Department of Justice get back to you and say, "Hey, Bill, that stuff that doesn't exist, man. Forget about it."
No, but in truth, I haven't heard yet back from them what they view, how they view it, or if they're going to tell me. I mean, they don't have to tell me. After all, if they start an investigation, it's not supposed to be public knowledge.
So, where do we go from here, guys? Where should we? Because and people are saying, this illegal surveillance stuff, Dave. Okay, it's bad, but it's not that big a deal. Bill and Kirk, I think it's what I truly believe that it's absolutely the foundation to the future of our country. Am I wrong on that?
No, it's no, you're absolutely right, Dave. This is fundamental to everything we do as a society, in our society. I mean, everything. I mean, it allows them the ability to manufacture evidence, to retroactively analyze and research and investigate anybody or anything they want. Or they can do it in live, like they're doing now. They're reviewing this data. The FBI and the DEA and the SOD, the Special Operations Division, and the DEA are looking into this data, and includes the IRS, by the way. So that's how they were able to slow roll people from the Tea Party or associated with the Tea Party from getting 501c3. They were able to see the communities and the relationships in all the NSA data. They could see that, and they have direct access with no oversight into that database. And that's very dangerous. That's like the Gestapo or the Stasi. And even, I keep quoting Wolfgang Schmidt, a former East German Stasi lieutenant colonel, who said about the NSA spying program, he said, for us, this would have been a dream come true. Well, that tells you where we are.
Well, and Bill, wasn't he the guy who told you that if they took all the files from the Stasi in East Germany on the people they surveilled in their own country, that it would go like kilometers high?
I think it's 70 kilometers or something like that. I can't remember. And I can't remember who he told that to either. So
it's 72 kilometers, 40 miles.
Yeah.
And this guy was like, wow, this would be great if we had this.
Yeah, that's right.
So there are a number of people that say, I'm not doing anything bad, and I don't mind that the government is monitoring my emails, phone calls, internet activity, and financial transactions. Kirk, what do you say to those folks?
I have to just simply say this. When the government amasses so much information about every facet of a person's life, you lose your control over your own existence. You lose it. You give it up. Why? Because people can manipulate you. You won't even know it's happening because of what they know about your bank accounts, of your friendships, about things you shouldn't have done but didn't really hurt anybody. They can blackmail you. They can look at your choices and use that against you. What I'm trying to say is, when you're in control of your own person, you make the choices about how to live freely. When they own all the information about you, they make those decisions and box you in a way that they want. In other words, they decide whether you've done something wrong. You don't think you did, but there's no judge, no jury.
Yep.
They take control and make that decision. Now, if that sounds like it's okay to somebody, you're in a country that I don't want to be in.
Me either.
Yeah. They also have to understand that that's a total reversal of the underlying principles and our founding fathers put into the Constitution. That is, the people were supposed to know what the government's doing. The government was not supposed to know what the people were doing. Mm-hmm. So I'd reflect back on what Reagan said, President Reagan. He said, we were a country with a government. But now, as Kirk has amply pointed out, we are a government with a country. It's a total flip of the intent of this nation.
Can we ever get it back?
Yeah, sure.
Tell us.
And I think part of the process that's ongoing right now is going to start it. Now we have to be vigilant here and even watch the people who say they're going to help correct this. And let's hold their feet to the fire and make sure they start doing that. If they do, then we're on the path to recovery. If not, then we're just still on continuing down that slippery slope toward a totalitarian state.
Bill, are you more hopeful today than you were before the election of 2016 for that outcome?
Yeah, because of President Trump and Attorney General Barr, the other until now, and the prosecutor he's hired to investigate this. Until now, I haven't had too much hope about our entire government. I wanted to fire them all because they're all either directly involved in the cover-up and the obstruction of justice in opening this up to the public, or they're accessories, unknowing accessories to it, because they just simply don't know what they're signing up to when they pass some of these laws.
Bill Binney and Kirk Wiebe, I'd like to thank you for your service to our country. And no, you didn't retire in 2001. You're still fighting for 320 million Americans every day. And I thank you for your patriotism and for your courage.